In 1 Corinthians 2, Paul picks up where he left off in chapter 1 when he was talking about how the things of God are foolishness to the world, but they save the people who hear it. It says in verse 4, "My message and my preaching were very plain. Rather than using clever and persuasive speeches, I relied only on the power of the Holy Spirit, and I did this so you would not trust in human wisdom, but in the power of God." And remember, earlier he was saying in the first chapter how some people like to follow Apollos, and some people like to follow Peter, and some Paul. And he's just saying this, listen, I wasn't fancy or anything like this, but the Spirit of God, and it was by the power of the Spirit of God that I was able to communicate anything to you. And he says later in verse 10, "It was to us that God revealed these things by his Spirit, for his Spirit searches out everything and shows us God's deep secrets." And remember, the Spirit, God's Holy Spirit, notice it's capitalized. That's talking about God himself, God the Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity. And so he says here in verse 14, "But people who aren't spiritual can't receive these truths from God's Spirit. It all sounds foolish to them, and they can't understand it, for only those who are spiritual can understand what the Spirit means." And so this passage here, this short chapter, chapter 2, is just talking about how the message of the cross, the message of Jesus. Remember, Paul brought it in the first place to Corinth because he planted the church there on his first or his second missionary journey. But he's saying the whole reason that someone receives this message, because it doesn't really make sense to the natural mind, to the regular person, if you just try to think about it. He says the reason a person can receive it in the first place is because the Holy Spirit of God moves them and reveals it to them in their life. And this is a great point of application for you as you're reading this. Like, have you seen this in your own life? If you're a Christian, you should be able to go back and realize, well, the reason I'm a Christian is because Jesus has revealed it to me and the Holy Spirit has allowed me to receive the truth and see it and read it and respond to it. And for those of you who maybe are going through this reading plan, if you're not yet a Christian, I just would encourage you to say, God, allow me to see your truth in the Bible. So go ahead and read chapter 2, and we'll see you tomorrow for chapter 3.